The good news about Star Wars The Force Awakens is that it's fairly bloodless. I mean, yeah, there's a lot of violence and there's certainly a high body count throughout the film, but there's actually very little blood and gore in the film, so it's somewhat family friendly in that way. There's also absolutely no sex or nudity in the film whatsoever, and there's no swearing or offensive language. So again, it does tip towards the family-friendly scale of movies. So in terms of the violence, there are a couple of scenes which might be a little bit disturbing, especially to small ones. Probably the kind of biggest scene for me was there's a scene where a group of townspeople or villagers are rounded up and then they're ordered to be shot. You don't actually see this, or killed I should say, not necessarily shot. You don't actually see the massacre happen, but you do see one of the main characters walking past the pit a little bit later, and there are the corpses kind of strewn in this pit where they were rounded up. It's not really focused upon, it isn't dwelled upon, but you certainly get that sense. There is a distance from it, so it's not in your face at all. But I did find that to be a little kind of, a little bit confronting. As I said, there is a very high body count as well, and you see people being, attacked in all kinds of ways, mostly with, lightsabers and shooting style weapons. In one scene there's a couple of lightsaber scenes where you see the weapon kind of inserted into skin. In one situation, it's a shoulder, and you see it kind of like, pierce the shoulder. There isn't really a lot of attention to detail in terms of the injury, but it is dwelled upon a little bit, and you see the expression of the victim looking quite distressed and in pain. And there is another scene when someone is run through with a lightsaber. And this scene is a little bit more drawn out. Here you do get a stronger sense of the death actually happening. And it is a little bit more kind of, dramatic than some of the other deaths. In other situations, it kind of, happens through people being thrown off, high ledges and that kind of thing. You see a lot of explosions, planets exploding and that kind of thing. And you see mid-air battles and so on. So you get the sense that there's a very large-scale violent events happening at different times. But like I said, it's Star Wars and it's Disney, so it's not kind of dwelled upon. And, certainly if you've seen any of the previous films, then this one is absolutely no more violent or confronting or upsetting than anything you've seen before. In terms of the sex and nudity, so no sex at all. The nudity, there isn't any. Even a lot of the costumes, the outfits aren't particularly tight-fitting or anything like that. And if you've seen the previous films, you'll already be aware that there relationships have happened between certain characters. So only with that previous knowledge do you kind of understand that those themes are touched on, but there really isn't any kind of, display of sex or nudity. One person I think is kissed on the forehead and there's some hugging, but that really is it. And there's no drug use anywhere through the film. The closest thing that it comes to displaying any alcohol use is there is a scene, it looks like a bar or perhaps even a party. We kind of understand it's more like a bar, where all kind of alien-looking characters are, sitting around and they drink, or they're holding goblets, I suppose, and cups. So you might kind of draw from that they could be alcoholic, but there certainly isn't, specifically or indicated that it's actually alcohol. Just one thing back to the violence, probably one scene that might be a little bit distressing, particularly for small children, are some of the creatures. Some of the creatures are quite wild and weird looking, big scary teeth and that kind of thing. And there is one particular creature which is quite large and gigantic, and it does pursue people quite aggressively, and some of these characters are sort of swallowed whole or eaten or bitten. So be aware of that too. But otherwise, as I said, it's a Disneyfied version of Star Wars. It is family friendly. Everyone else in the schoolyard is going to be talking about it. So, I would happily let my children go and see it again. Of course, it's up to you. My youngest child was 4 when, my youngest child was 7 that I took along and absolutely loved it. So, but it's up to you whether you decide to take your child. If you do, have fun. It's a wonderful film. It's directed by J.J. Abrams and stars Daisy Ridley and John Boyega, as well as a couple of faces that you might recognise. If you want to read more about my content breakdown of the film, please do so at cinemum.net.